Simeon, it's a pleasure to have him with us. He's the Group Director of Sustainability and Corporate Communications of Vitasoy International Holdings Limited. It's an international food and beverage company publicly listed in Hong Kong. Simeon has spoken internationally on sustainability topics and have served in many external roles, including being a board member on GRI's Global Sustainability Standards Board between 2015 and 2016. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Simeon, please.
Right, thanks, Darren. So we'll try to pull the PPT up first. Can you see it all right? Can you see I've shared my desktop. Is it showing?
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, yes, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get started then. Okay. Well, thank you again, and greetings from Hong Kong. Not sure if I'm the only one from this part of the world, but I do hope you're all keeping well in this difficult time. And thank you for the organizers for inviting me to speak today. So as I'm speaking to an international audience today, well, Vitasoy is a bit of a household name in Hong Kong, and we have a strong presence in Asia Pacific, but I'm not sure if all of you would have heard of us. So let me just give you a bit of a few words on our history, because we are celebrating our 80th anniversary this year, and our beginning has a lot to do with shaping our company's purpose. So Vitasoy was founded during the Second World War, and just before the war started, our founder, which is the gentleman in the picture there, Dr. K.S. Low, he attended a lecture which discussed how the nutritional model of the Western world based on dairy might not work so well in China, or at least not at the time anyway. So the lecturer went on to say that the real cow of China was the humble soybean. And then came World War II, and there were a lot of refugees who fled to Hong Kong. So Dr. Low and some friends were delivering supplies to the refugee camps, and he noticed that they were really suffering from malnutrition. He then remembered the lecture he attended about the nutritional values of soybeans, and he started supplying soybean milk to the refugees. He quickly saw an improvement in their health, and that gave him the idea to get into mass production of soy beverages. So that's how Vitasoy started back in 1940. So fast forward to today, we are now a publicly listed company in Hong Kong with a global presence of about 40 markets. We have manufacturing facilities in Hong Kong, mainland China, Singapore, Philippines, and Australia. So the purpose of the company has evolved from 80 years ago, from providing affordable nutrition to a society in need, to nowadays providing plant-based food and beverages that are nutritious and to offer more healthy choices for communities, which is lower in carbon as well. So we have a clear purpose, but the spectrum of issues under the sustainability umbrella is quite extensive. So what sort of issues are material to us? So you might be a bit shocked to see this slide and wonder whether you've gone to the wrong symposium. Let me explain. I don't know if any of you have had a reflexology treatment before. So in reflexology, there are pressure points on our feet that are connected to various organs in our bodies. So people in the sustainability field or environmental field like to talk about footprint. So I thought I'll attempt to use this to illustrate our sustainability footprint. So let's first look at the heart, which is packaging. I'm taking the English meaning, the heart of the problem, literally. So packaging is the most prominent issue for us because it is in close contact to our consumers. So even before they consume our products, they come into contact with our packaging. So packaging does serve an important function in carrying and protecting our products, but it is also a substantial environmental issue due to their single-use nature. So the next major issue is climate change, as Darren has rightfully pointed out in his presentation. And I've assigned it to the lungs because our lungs take in oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide. And indeed, our carbon footprint is extensive. So we emit carbon directly from our own operations, from the use of energy, and also from our supply chain. So carbon dioxide is also oxygen for plants. So we must also be vigilant in the way we farm and to prevent deforestation. So on the other hand, our product portfolio is over 90% plant-based, and a plant-based diet is lower in carbon, and so we are also contributing positively to the mitigation of climate change. So next is water. So water serves as a material that goes into our product. It is essential for growing our raw materials. It serves an important function in cleansing our raw materials and machines. But we want to use as little water as possible in producing our products. So I'm assigning water to both the bladder and the spleen. The bladder removes wastewater stream from our body, and it is like the wastewater stream from cleansing our raw material and manufacturing plant. The spleen, because it governs blood, and water in our product is like the blood in our bodies. So apart from packaging, we also generate some post-production organic waste, such as soy pulp and tea leaves. So two organs are relevant here. So first, our kidney removes waste from the body, and the transverse colon, well, we know it serves to get rid of waste. So by reducing organic waste or keeping the recycling volume up, we help reduce landfill burden and keep the city clean. And then there's our staff. They are like our ears, eyes and ears, our key sensory functions. So we need to treat our staff well, ensure their health and safety, and make sure they have a working environment that is free from harassment and discrimination. And last but not least, we need strong governance, which is like the function of the brain. It controls all functions of the body and interprets information. So the governance of an organization is important in making sure we make the best decisions to ensure we serve the purpose of the company and that we move towards achieving sustainability. So we've put in place strong governance in looking after sustainability specifically to do that. So this is looking a lot less like the picture on the wall of a reflexology clinic, but a more of a sustainability footprint for Vitasoy now. But I only have time to go into details of two of these subject areas, and I have chosen packaging, which is the heart of our problem, and climate change, which is an urgent global issue. So let's look at packaging in more detail. I won't go into detail on this slide, but this is just to show you that policies presents both a risk and an opportunity because policies are cropping up everywhere. Or closer to Europe, UK and EU are both introducing a plastic tax on beverage containers now. We'll talk a bit more about policies later on. So what sort of packaging materials do we use? First of all, paper cartons. Vitasoy was actually the company who introduced paper cartons to Hong Kong in 1975. Now, these paper packs are easy to transport. They waste very little space because they are rectangular in shape, and so in turn, the carbon footprint in transportation is lower. They are lightweight and they are sturdy at the same time. But little did we know that something so good as a packaging material has become such a major issue in collection and recycling. Now, there is only one recycling facility in Hong Kong that deals with paper cartons specifically, and there are a couple more in mainland China. But recycling the paper cartons requires some effort. We require people to cut them open, rinse them, and dry them before they put it in the collection boxes. Otherwise, any residual beverages left will contaminate the recycling process. And if they are not collected immediately, it will foul in a matter of hours and create a real hygiene issue. Aluminium cans. In Asia, in particular, mainland China has reported a high recycling rate. I think it is mainly because there is a value to aluminium cans, so the market naturally takes care of it. However, the entire process of manufacturing aluminium is incredibly energy intensive and require a copious amount of electricity and water. And then glass. Glass is not a bad material for beverages at all. They are easy to clean and easy to recycle or reuse, but they are, however, heavy and therefore has a high logistic cost. So in our portfolio, glass now occupies a very small space. And now we come to the big issue, plastics, mainly PET, so polyethylene terephthalate is probably the most discussed packaging issue internationally. So I'll spend a bit more time talking about plastic now. So one of the main problems with plastic bottles is that we are unable to recover the bulk of it for recycling. The reason behind this is mainly because virgin plastic is cheaper than recycled plastic. So the market is unable to drive the level of recycling necessary to resolve this issue. So while countries like UK or the EU in general is talking about taxing companies for using PET bottles, we have a different issue in mainland China because the Chinese government is yet to allow recycled PET to be used as food containers. I think this is because they are not yet comfortable that the source of the collected plastic is safe to use as a food grade plastic. So to add to the complication, there are many so-called innovations cropping up. I mean, innovation is good. We do need innovation, but there are more plastic-like materials being invented as alternative beverage containers. The problem is that they look like plastic, and if it's not collected and sorted properly, they can end up in the PET recycling plants and contaminate the process, and that will result in the recyclate being unusable or reduced in value, or may not be even be suitable as food grade plastic anymore. So as a company, we have done several things. We reduce the weight of the bottles. That means using less plastic in the first place. Some of our product lines, for example, all our water lines in Hong Kong have switched to recycled PET now. But collection and recycling, collection is still the elephant in the room. Is really the main problem. As I said before, is if we manage to collect them all and reuse them all, we probably there's no need to really use any more virgin plastic, and we can make the economy really circular by doing that. So let me share with you some of the efforts that we've made on collection. So the picture on the left is a collection box built for collecting used beverage cartons, paper cartons. So we have placed this in all sorts of places like schools, residential complexes, shopping malls, supermarkets, convenience store, even petrol stations. And we are seeing a steady increase in consumers using them to return used beverage cartons. Now, the picture on the right is a reverse vending machine. I've seen them in the UK and in Europe, so and this is probably not new to you, but this particular model you're seeing now can collect both plastic bottles and paper cartons. So we also have to do a fair bit on education. The picture on the left is our mobile education center, and on the right is an education center we built right next to the paper carton recycling facility in Hong Kong. So it serves visitors from schools and any organizations who care to visit and listen to us explaining the paper carton recycling process and why it is important. This is a distilled water station which consumers can purchase water using their own bottles. So several other beverage companies in Hong Kong are putting out their own versions of this. The objective is to try to make this ubiquitous to encourage people to bring their own bottles. Now, unfortunately, the level of usage of everything I've just told you have not reached the point to have any substantial impact. Now we're making a good start, but we're far from reaching the capacity really to deal with packaging problem at scale. So as you can see, although we have quite a few initiatives in place, packaging remains a huge challenge for us. So let's now switch to climate change, and let me say a few words there. I don't think there's any doubt that this is a real issue, and Vitasoy certainly has been impacted by it. So a clear example is the drought in Australia last year affecting our local soybean supply. So we ended up, instead of sourcing locally, we had to source a certain amount of soybeans from the US. And that has increased both the cost and our carbon footprint. So climate change is a bit of a massive topic, and so I just have time to focus on the mitigation part today and share with you what we plan to do and the challenges we face. So this is just a list of countries that have openly committed to carbon neutrality, and the list is growing. And this is a list of Fortune Global 500 companies who have made a public commitment that they will or will be going carbon neutral by different dates, and the list is also growing. So we then look at the case for Vitasoy, the situation with Vitasoy. So if we were to go carbon neutral, what will the building blocks be like? So first, the power that we get from the power grid needs to be cleaner. So this is a very difficult issue for Hong Kong because there is not enough natural resources to power the whole of Hong Kong through renewable energy. Our power is mainly generated by coal and gas plants and a smaller percentage from nuclear. But the power companies in Hong Kong are actually switching more from coal to gas. And that will help, but this is not enough to drastically reduce carbon intensity of the energy grid. The government is also building incineration plants to turn waste into energy, and that will help too. But our power grid in Hong Kong will remain, quite fossil fuel heavy. So so the Hong Kong government has pledged to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. So we are waiting to see what the concrete plan is. So then in mainland China, where 70% of our revenue comes from, renewable energy supply is becoming more abundant in some provinces, but it is still, again, a long way to go as more coal-fired stations are being built to meet the energy demand there. So the second building block is more in our control, which is energy efficiency. So substantial improvements in energy efficiency would require capital investments, but that is okay because we can build a good business case there because we save energy and there's a lot of savings there. But the problem is energy efficiency will plateau, and we will need to still deal with the energy that we use. So next is on-site renewable energy or distributed renewable energy. We have estimated that if we put solar panels on all of our properties as much as we can, it will still only take care of about 10% of our total energy use. But we're doing that, but it is still an important building block, but it still doesn't really resolve the whole issue. The next building block is a green tariff, green energy from the grid, actually. So it is related to the first building block, meaning that what sort of electricity can we get from the power companies? So there are, as I mentioned, there are provinces in China that can provide more renewable energy now, or nuclear power, if we and we can count that in as clean energy. But low carbon energy is still not yet widely available in this part of the world. So then the next building block is renewable energy certificates. It could be another way of bringing low carbon energy into a company's energy portfolio without actually being connected to the grid. So at the moment, these tend to be expensive. At least the ones produced in Hong Kong are very expensive, and they're not plentiful in Asia. So we are looking into the option of sourcing them internationally. Carbon offsetting, purchasing carbon offsets. So we've spoken to Vitasoy's management about this, and they have made it very clear that we want purchasing offsets to be the smallest of the building blocks and be used as a last resort. And I can understand why we have this sentiment, because we don't want to really just spend money to buy offsets without pursuing more efforts in driving our emissions down. So lastly, it will be technologies. So potentially helpful would be a leapfrog of technologies. And by technologies, I refer to any technology that can help us lower our carbon footprint, be it efficiency or actually, green hydrogen, for example, is something that we are looking at very closely. And if successful, it may be able to get to scale. It will become very helpful for companies or even countries in reaching their carbon neutral goals. So China has pledged to reach carbon neutrality by 2060, and Hong Kong as a city has also pledged to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. So I believe policies like this would help and play a big part in pushing for technologies to happen, to help us get there. Most of the key markets we are in have now put forward commitments on either drastically reduce their carbon emission or reaching carbon neutrality. But in most of these places, however, we are yet to see a concrete plan going forward. So we are watching this space very carefully, and hopefully there will be more concrete plans that we can see how, as a country or as a city, how we would move towards carbon neutrality, and that will really help companies like ourselves plan our way forward. So last slide here, I'm just going to leave you here with showing you our sustainability framework. So it is very simply framed in two parts: making the right products and making products the right way. So we are committed to making good products, lower carbon products, health will benefit the communities, and we want to make our products responsibly. So I guess that's all I have time for. So I shall leave you with that, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Simeon. That's a really interesting overview of the work that Vitasoy are doing. For any of the attendees, if you have any questions, then do please put them in the Q&A live event box. I wonder, Simeon, if I could just ask a quick question, just in terms of the sort of implementation of the sustainability agenda at Vitasoy as well, and in particular, how do you sort of implement these changes with so many people in your supply chain, and in particular the work with your growers?
Okay, two aspects there. So we obviously have to empower and build capacity within Vitasoy to make sure everybody understand the issues and help the company implement those strategies. The first thing we did was to put sustainability KPIs into all our managers and above colleagues. So to try to get them to think about how their work relates to sustainability and how they can play a part. So with supply chain, that obviously for more on the purchasing department's area. So what we have done is we have drafted supply responsibility principles that we have conveyed to all of our suppliers, and we actually require them to sign that commitment before we would do business with them. And then we have now built up a system of assessing their ESG risk on top of other business risk. And if we see a company who potentially has an ESG risk, then we will dig deeper further into their performance and make sure we're working with responsible suppliers. With farming, we have developed our own sustainable farming guidelines. That took into account a lot of international standards, those put forward by, for example, the Roundtable of Sustainable Soil, Proterra, for example, and build that into our own sustainable farming practices that we require our contract farmers to adhere to. The biggest challenge we have is with contract farmers in mainland China, because the contract farms we have there are really in the outback of China. So the awareness is kind of lower. So what we did was we provided training to all the farmers, and we invited people in the nearby communities to actually join in the training, and then we explained to them what's required in the guidelines, and we audited them throughout the whole agricultural cycle, so all the way from planting to harvesting, to make sure we work in a more collaborative way to try to bring the standard up to scratch, so that we can say we are really working with responsible suppliers. So that's briefly how we do it.
Thank you, Simeon. And obviously, we've got a lot of interest in soybean production, particularly in South America, has been one of the major agricultural exports too. So thank you so much for your talk and for providing an overview of business and the sort of work that you're doing.